didn't get sent to Vietnam.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and probably like you, I can't believe we're actually now in May. Allan, I think we've got a video.
All right.
April is behind us. Today is the first day of May, and once again, our nation's newscasters were caught flat-footed.
May 1st. Can you believe it?
Yeah, no.
Crazy.
I know.
I really can't believe May is here, Sherry.
I can't believe it's May already.
I know.
I can't believe it's May 1st already.
It is May 1st, a new month. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it's already May.
I cannot believe it's already May.
I'm kind of flabbergasted that it's already May.
Well, that may be the incredulity that is permeating through the nation, but we promise you here, we're going to give you facts and you will believe. So, joining us we've got our troika of lawyers back from vacation and other spots. We've got Bill Seikaly, we've got Joel Sklar, and we've got in business casual Friday clothing, Steve Fishman. Mumford represent. We also have president of BME Consulting and former director of the Wayne County Public Services Department, Beverly Watts. We've got labor and community activist Barb Ingalls. Nancy Derringer, our intrepid and veteran journalist, is still traveling. But we also have, of course, as always, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So, again, we are in a courtroom, and now that we have our esteemed lawyer trio, we can discuss this in greater detail. Former President Trump is in New York in the hush money trial, but this week there was a little bit of a wrinkle. He was found to be in criminal contempt for blathering at the railing, as he does every day when he's in court. And the judge apparently this time said, yep, it is criminal contempt because he violated the gag order. I think we have a video for this first before we go into analysis, Allan.
All right.
And you know, Trump has been complaining that he's stuck in court when he should be out campaigning. We came up with a solution for him. We figured out a way that for him to be in two places at once, and it's really quite incredible. We blew him up to life size. We put some wheels on him. And watch this real closely here, because we call it the MAGA blaster.
Oh my God, gross for a Friday.
At least it's before lunch, but after second breakfast. All right, how's this trial going? Where do you think it's going? And how significant is it that now, I guess we can call Trump legally and accurately a criminal, because after all, he was found guilty of criminal contempt?
Yeah, me? Well, there's a few things. The criminal contempt part, I think the judge is handling it absolutely correctly, because he really only has two choices. He can fine him $1,000. That's a rule, obviously, in New York. Again, keep in mind, when you're asking our troika to talk, we don't practice law in New York. So we're going by what we read or what we hear. His only two choices were fine him $1,000 per count of criminal contempt or throw him in the can. And I think correctly, he's waiting on that. And he continues to fine him, and they'll do it again. There'll be a few more of those things that'll happen. With respect to how the trial is going, it depends on who you're listening to. It seems to me, and it seems to Andrew Weissman, who's a pretty experienced federal prosecutor, that it's going about as well as the prosecutors could ask it to go. Each witness first thing, just the sleaziness of the case is something in and of itself that is interesting to listen to. But each witness is laying things out there that tie him into everything that went on. And that's really what it all boils down to. And I think you guys probably noticed when Keith Davidson testified, and he will contend absolutely for Sleaze Bucket of the Year based on what we now know of him and his practice, what he would call the practice of law, which I'm not sure that the Troika here would agree it's the practice of law. But what they tried to do, it seemed to me, was they're walking a very thin line, because they wanted to show what a sleaze bucket he was, and this guy and that guy and this person and that person. But the same thing with Michael Cohen. All these sleaze buckets are the ones that Trump deals with on a regular basis. And I think that's the balancing test. I can't see the jurors. None of us can. That's really the only way you can get any kind of opinion as to what's going on. But I have to believe that the jurors are firmly convinced that Trump was in the middle of it all. And the only chance he has would be if one or two or whatever decide, well, it's in the middle of it all, but it's not really a felony. I mean, that's the way I think it's going.
Well, we may not be able to see the jury, Steve, but we know, thanks to Trump, that they're 95% Democrats. I don't know. I tried to run the percentages with a 12-person jury and even with the 6 alternatives, and I could never come up with the number 95. I think that his math is off. Joel.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that weeks ago, months ago, Steve had said once you hear Trump's own voice in the courtroom, it becomes devastating. And they're playing those tapes, the tape with Cohen. My guess is that there's other communications directly from his mouth, and those are damning. They are so difficult to explain away and somehow contextualize as being normal or legal. That is devastating, I think. So Steve was prescient in that. The prosecution played those tapes early. The jury knows them. They heard Trump's voice. They see him squirming at the table or sleeping at the table. The trial, we'll see how it plays, but from what I'm reading, it's playing well.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill. No, Bill, you go.
Right. I find this fascinating. I became transfixed on the OJ trial. I watched almost the whole thing, and in that case, I always thought it wasn't the defense that won the case; it was the prosecution that lost it. And in this case, I think the prosecution's being very careful, being very systematic, point by point, doing it all right. I agree with what Joel said, that this is devastating for Trump because they're using his own words. To Steve's point about these sleazeballs that they have to rely on, Steve, you've done more of these than most. You don't get to convict a gangster without calling the sleazeballs in, because, look, you couldn't hire most lawyers, I hope, though I begin to wonder. You couldn't hire most lawyers to do this kind of crap. You got to get a guy like Cohen to be able to do this dirty work for you, his fixer. And I'm interested in people's opinions on whether or not he's likely to testify, because as a litigator, and I've litigated a lot of cases, this is a damned if I do and damned if I don't situation. If he doesn't testify, I think his fate is sealed. I think if he does testify, it's worse. So I find it very interesting. I'm going to watch with great interest to see what he does here.
But I mean, you're talking about Trump, right, Bill? Testifying?
Trump.
If he testifies and if they allow broadcast, I think it'll beat the final episode of MASH for most watch show. Steve.
So it's interesting that Bill said that, because today, again, I give the judge a lot of credit. They were in there banding stuff about the gag order, and the lawyers were making assholes of themselves again. And then the judge, according to what I read in the Washington Post just before we came on the air, the judge made sure he informed Trump right to his face. Look, gag order is just a gag order about what you do outside of the court. You have every right to get up on the witness stand, testify, tell your story, blah, blah, blah. And that is really true, Ann Farnell. And I wasn't going to mention that because I don't want to damn the whole school because Michael Cohen went there. But in any event, I thought that was pretty cool. I think the judge, he knew what he was doing when he said it, and now it's being publicized all over the place. I agree with Bill. We've said from the beginning, I think all of us have agreed, and I certainly thought from the beginning, there's no way. He's a coward, and I told you guys, Neil Katyal said the same thing on MSNBC. He called him a chicken instead of a coward. That's the first thing. The second thing, he'd convict himself in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And falsely claiming that the judge won't let him testify. I mean, wow. Beverly, let's play a thought experiment here. Let's make you the 5% of the jury that's not Democratic. Is there anything? Is there anything you've heard in the testimony that you think might edge toward reasonable doubt?
No. But I'm scarred, so I'm really the wrong person to ask. But basically, I have not heard anything when I've listened to it that would make me view him and say, oh, a little reasonable doubt. I am glad to see the judge, coming down hard and imposing the fines, whether it bounces off Teflon Don. I'm also equally glad to know that the latest poll in Michigan this week showed that at least 50 or 51% of the voters in Michigan does not think this trial is a witch hunt, and they're very much watching it. But I'm also concerned that nationwide is not affecting his numbers this trial, making it go down. So that's what's a little concerning to me.
Well, go ahead, Barb.
They don't. The biggest problem is that they just don't think he should have to. That everything he did is fine. Is that it doesn't? They know he's criminal. They know it's all criminal. They know that he's lying, but they just don't. They think he has immunity and he could do whatever he wanted. That's the part that terrifies me.
Apparently, one Supreme Court justice also agrees. That's terrifying.
Yes.
You're talking about Kavanaugh?
No, I'm talking about Alito.
No, Alito. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I was going to say, Kavanaugh has written his opinion about presidential immunity, but his thing is he thinks it should be a pretty wide berth. But once the president is out of office, then he thinks criminal prosecution is okay.
Yeah, Alito's questions during last hearing were just terrifying.
It's concerning.
Concerning, terrifying. I mean, as a lawyer, it caused me to be embarrassed. It just caused me to be embarrassed.
Here's the thing, and it gets me at the Supreme Court all the time. I remember when they were arguing about an abortion case, and the Chief Justice had the colossal gall to ask the female lawyer for the government, what's the difference between 14 weeks and 24 weeks or whatever it was? And what I wanted her to say so badly was, something, Justice Roberts, I didn't realize that you've been pregnant. Tell us about it. So when Alito said to the government lawyer, I don't want to talk about the facts of this case. I swear to God, if it had been me, I'd have said, well, you know something, Judge? I've been doing this 51 years. I've never been in front of any judge, not down to traffic court, that doesn't want to talk about the facts of the case in front of him. What is this, some kind of Plato-like psychological, philosophical exercise? That, to me, showed. And then they echoed it. Gorsuch echoed it, Kavanaugh. It's like they sat around before and planned, here's how we're going to handle this. We're going to pretend there are no facts in this case. And we're going to make it sound like it's this lofty thing going back to George Washington, or going like every president's going to be a criminal and the next president's going to screw him and blah, blah, blah. And they didn't want to talk about the facts of the case. And to me, that was it.
Well, that's the argument that Ginny Thomas makes. She says, Clarence and I never talk about these cases, but that she never said that she doesn't talk about them with Roberts and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and the rest of them.
And Trump.
So
exactly.
So you brought up the issue of polling, Barb. Just this past earlier in the week, Donald Trump was in Michigan, up in Freeland, with numbers at the Midland Bay City Saginaw Airport rivaling that of his first inauguration.
My birthplace, Saginaw. Watch it now.
Hey, I'm from mid-Michigan too, Beverly. I'm from Lapeer. So, but by the way, just as a disclaimer, in case there's some Islamophobes out there, MBS Airport is not named for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. So, just putting that out there. But he was on his usual tirade on a day off from the hush money trial. And as you said, Barb, I mean, he was definitely preaching to the converted with songs like Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody, Survivor's Eye of the Tiger, Luke Combs' Forever After All, and of course, Billy Idol's cover of Moni Moni. How do you think this is playing in Michigan? I mean, Beverly, you said that things are not looking that great for him. Is the luster finally starting to wear off?
I'm just, at first, if you would have asked me this a month ago, I would say yes, but it's getting a little concerning. But I was encouraged, by the Michigan poll of the voters that, over 50% think this trial does matter and they're watching. But also on the other hand, you look at the law enforcement, nationwide, the unions, law enforcement who is supporting him, he's handing out pizza and everything else. I'm just not sure. You had the, which I know we'll talk about, the former mayor of Detroit, showed up at the rally. So you just don't know. And then there's a little strike. I start seeing a little slant a little bit to me when I see how the media a little bit, is now, they're showing, and more things are like, okay, Biden is so old, so old, so old. So it's just like it's slanting this picture. It's concerning. I wasn't this concerned a month ago. Now I am.
Okay. Actually, before we go to you, Bill, Allan, I think we have a video of not the ghost of Coleman Young, but Kwame Kilpatrick.
Kwame Kilpatrick,
former mayors of Detroit,
who was at the Trump rally in Saginaw. And this is an interview I did with him in January of 2022 at a clothing store on Livernois.
That next morning, he just did what he said he was going to do. Okay. Donald Trump heard the pitch and said, I'm going to help him. And the next day, he signed my commutation. Yeah. Who could ever not be thankful for him being in that position at that time and for him helping me?
And he has said that he wouldn't answer the question whether to vote for Trump, but he said, I won't be voting for Biden.
Wow.
Bill. I there are a couple issues. I think Beverly's astute observations are important, but Beverly, only 51% think it's important. I mean, where are we when it's that close that there are 49% of the people who think it's bullshit? That's terrifying.
Look, I'm still surprised that you got him leading by, anywhere from 1 to 4 points. I'm surprised at that.
Well, I want to go there. The other thing is that Kilpatrick, I mean, I think that it's interesting that Trump didn't call him out, but he was in Freeland. And if anybody's ever been up to Freeland, that is not exactly the bastion of liberalism or racial equity. So I thought that was interesting. The other issue is that, I think we are all prone to looking at these issues and saying, oh, okay, this affects the election in this way and this affects the election in that way. I think that there are many reasons that these polls are coming out like they are. We're going to get to this, but I think that the issues on college campuses, I think Biden's silence on the Gaza war impacts his numbers and artificially increases Trump's numbers. I think Biden would help himself if he did something about those issues. But I think that we can't look at any one thing and say, oh, that's the reason that these numbers look like this. The voting bloc is not monolithic.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a collective. It's all of that. I think they combine it with, you're talking about age, but definitely the war, definitely now these protests that's going on. So I think it's a combination. And of course, people are always going to say the economy.
Okay, Allan.
I agree with what you guys are saying, except I disagree with Bill on the fact that Biden has been silent. I feel like he has spoken up. He's made his thoughts known about ending the war. He sent Blinken over there. Blinken has been very verbal. And
Allan, you may misconstrue what I said.
He doesn't mean that.
The college campus issues.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Because today in the New York Times headline today said Biden breaks his silence because he said he'd had enough of it. Basically, they had the right to protest, but he didn't want any violence, and there was a headline above the fold in the New York Times today.
Right.
Yeah. Barb.
I also, if you look at the media that the Trump people consume, they're saying they're completely misrepresenting the economy. They're completely misrepresenting Biden's record on things. And I'm pissed off at Joe Biden. But as presidents go domestically, I think he's been as good a president as in my lifetime. He's done more for the American people than Barack Obama did. He is moving money along. He is moving things. But if you talk to a MAGA, they just kind of go, no, none of that is true. None of it is true. None of it is true. I mean, they repeat it and they believe it. And that's the problem. And I think that the regular media is really doing us a disservice not going after these
But
facts.
Barb, it's not. I don't think you can limit it to the MAGA people. I mean, unfortunately, so many average Americans just go, "Oh yeah." I mean, they've heard it so much. They go, "Oh yeah,
Right.
he's too old," or
Right.
"Oh yeah, he's he can't put a
Right.
sentence together." And you listen to Trump. Jesus, this guy hasn't put a coherent sentence together in a couple of years.
Not to mention, he's not that much. It's not a big, huge age gap.
No.
I mean,
Right.
how is everybody missing that?
Right.
Yeah.
Allan.
And I'm going to say the job growth numbers came out today. They're still in the positive side. I can't remember how many months, but it's quite a few months of growth, which is phenomenal. I mean,
fake numbers. That's what Trump is saying. He's saying they're all fake numbers. That it's classic Trump.
You never let the truth get in the way.
Absolutely.
But I was glad to see one of the local newscasts this week do a fact check. What Trump was saying.
We need to do it every day.
I know.
I had a friend visiting from Canada yesterday, and we went, as you do with friends from Canada, we went shopping and we went out to lunch, and she just said the prices are so much better here. And it's like, inflation is terrible everywhere.
Right.
Inflation is everywhere, and we don't have it. I mean, it's as much as anything else. And even when you consider the exchange, we're doing, but it is a lot. And I'm not trying to say that it isn't, but that's corporate greed. That has nothing to do with Joe Biden.
Well, and that's the scapegoating, and we'll come to you in a second, Steve. That they're saying that two companies that have really suffered when it comes to their earnings and their stock are McDonald's and Starbucks, and some are trying to take credit for this because of boycotts regarding Gaza. But at the same time, the price at McDonald's has shot up in large part because the minimum wage has gone up in some places, and corporations are looking to pass that on to consumers. So it gives a whole bunch of different narratives and explanations for things. Steve.
Well, that was back to what we were discussing before, and I think we're going to get to it because I looked at the list of topics. But the real problem, the way I see it, I'm really interested in Beverly's opinion. It's young people. Young people, given some of the things that are going on, which we'll talk about, and you have Michael Moore on the list, and I read everything he had to say. It's the young people that are going to sink us. And if this stuff continues the way it's going, I mean, he's always a little apoplectic about things, but I think he's on the right track. I really do.
Well, he was right in 2016, coming into the election after Labor Day, when he just put up the alarm and said, Hillary's going to lose this thing and lose it fairly decisively.
Right.
So I don't know if that makes him the Oracle of Davison, Michigan, but it seems to have some kind of resonance that's going there. But on the topic of the campus protests, I was actually at in Ann Arbor yesterday, and I saw the encampment. Those aren't MAGA people, folks. Their anger is on the other side of sort of the political spectrum. And I think that the images coming out of particularly UCLA, where you had the other side that was vicious, not only with violence, but using the N-word against Black pro-Palestinian protesters, and what was seen as the police doing nothing for 2 to 4 hours before going in, and yet still the media framing it and Biden repeating it, that this was protesters and violence that the police had to put down. Well, it wasn't violence coming out of the protesters. But the fact that Michigan's attitude is, well, the regents don't have to speak to the students because at least we don't have snipers on the rooftop of buildings like they do at Ohio State and Indiana, that we're not roughing up students like they did at Columbia and at the University of Texas. I mean, it seems as though there's like an awful lot of institutional relativism that's at play here. Yeah, Barb.
Rutgers and I think Brown University have sat down with the student leaders.
And Northwestern.
That's and have disbanded their encampments, and they know that they don't necessarily have won this, but they were heard, and they were able to do this. Now, I understand in New York City, when you have a cop as mayor of the city, you're not going to use gentle forces to dismantle something. You're going to go after them with everything you've got because there were broken windows. Oh no, broken windows. It makes me nuts. It makes me angry, and it proves that we haven't learned anything in the last 50 years. We haven't learned a goddamn thing about how to deal with young people who have legitimate questions and want to know what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I want to be heard.
But is it true that in New York and California that some of the crowd were, again, like someone said, it's not all about the students. You have these habitual people who just want to protest, fight, that has nothing to do with the war. They just trying to, I think, anti-government, anti-anybody, just want to be angry. You had some of the same people, you had legitimate people when you go back 2020, the Black Lives Matter movement, but then you had some other people that just joined it, and they're the ones that, a lot of them want to do the rioting and all of this, and then it became something else.
I really want to address that. I don't know about everybody here. I know that Steve and Allan, close to my age, and I'm serious about this. I went through some PTSD in the last couple of weeks watching these protests because there isn't anything that has gone on that I didn't experience during the anti-war movement. From cops saying, we called them rednecks back then, from cops letting rednecks to come in, storm into a group of us that were protesting in Royal Oak, and with baseball bats and 2x4s, kicking the shit out of us, and then coming in and dispersing them and arresting us. We went through all that. These were historically on college campuses, these were police riots. We were demonstrating peacefully, perhaps illegally. I will concede that. But we were demonstrating, and the police would come in and turn it into a violent activity.
Right.
So that was very difficult for me to watch. And I agree with, I think it was Beverly who said, or maybe it was Barb, we haven't learned anything over these years about how to deal with young people who have these grievances, because we really want them to express themselves. We want them to engage. The other thing, Beverly, to your point about outsiders, during the anti-war movement, we had a lot of nuts come in. And my point is, because there's no question that these are dominantly or predominantly student-involved protests. Yeah, there are outsiders. I don't know any situation in which outsiders don't come in. So,
right. I agree with you, Bill. But to a point where, just like Northwestern and just like Rutgers and others who were able to hear the students sit down and have a peaceful dialogue and have a resolution, I disagree with. I think those outsiders disrupt that type of format where you can get to something and have the peaceful, and that's where the outsiders really get on my nerves.
But that's true. But that's also. I'm sorry, Allan, for stepping on you there.
No, go ahead.
That during the anti-war days, and I don't want to reveal all my criminal activities, but during the anti-war days, we took it upon ourselves to police who was coming in. So there were plenty of times where I can think of one particular time where somebody decided it would be a good idea to try and set on fire an ROTC building on a campus. Yeah. And a group of us said, bullshit. And we got called names, but we stopped it. Right. And it's incumbent upon the student protesters to assist in policing that. Those things are important. And I think that they can happen, but not when you got cops coming in, swinging billy clubs and throwing.
And Bill, that's right. You're right. Bill, that was actually something I noticed when I was in Ann Arbor. I was walking through the encampment, and I had a blazer on and a dress shirt and sunglasses and an AirPod in my ear. And it probably didn't help that I was using every Yiddish word I've learned on the show.
I'm verklempt.
But they were looking at me a bit circumspect. They're like, what are you doing here? We don't recognize you. You're dressed a little bit too nicely. You don't kind of fit a certain mold. And I did. I actually disclaimed and disclosed who I was, and more importantly, who I wasn't. But that kind of ethos within that place, I think, as you said, they're very vigilant because they know how easily it could get exploited. So, Allan.
I was going to say, when we were on strike in 95, 96, 97, at the Detroit News, the Detroit Free Press, we initially were out at the printing plant on Sterling Heights on Mound Road. And one weekend, Labor Day weekend, there were just rows and rows of protesters, you know, of strikers. And we had a group from Ann Arbor. They were probably 20, 21 years old. And they were like in the 8th row, and they're throwing rocks at the cops who have riot gear on. And I told them they got to either leave or stand in front row. They're throwing rocks at the cops, and then the cops are beating the shit out of the people in the front row.
The throw, and then the drop.
Yeah,
So
and we
kicked
them out of some of our picket lines because they were trying to cause trouble and stuff like that. So there are people who are just looking to stir it up, and you know, look, the protests on campus, people should be protesting, whether you for the war, against the war, you know, whatever. When people are dying in the numbers they're dying at, it's okay to protest on campus, and it's okay to protest anywhere, you know.
I'll tell you, Allan, the vast majority of people in the Diag in Ann Arbor were actually non-Muslim, non-Arab. Like I said, I was by far not in the minority speaking Yiddish yesterday. So there you go. Barb.
It really makes it makes it really hard, and the infiltrators are something real. Those guys, there are a big school of thought, Allan, that those guys were paid by Gannett to come in and disrupt. That will always be something that was thought, but there was you can see. Exactly. They have frat boys in some of the schools going after them, but there's cops. When the U.S. Social Forum was here, there was a big demonstration on Woodward, and just walking around, and these guys were standing in the crowd, and it's like, you are such a cop. You know, this is just embarrassing. Oh, yeah. You're such a cop. It's like, oh no, I'm, one of you. It's like, not one of us.
There was a guy there was a cop who's clearly a Sterling Heights undercover cop wearing a T-shirt that said "Psycho," and we're like, "You got to go, buddy. You're a cop." And he's like, "Oh, So
no.
But look, all this does is prove that we've got problems on both sides, and have problems with cops doing their jobs. Cops been undercover for a long time, but I remember during the anti-war days, my older brother had a buddy who was a local cop, and he came up and whispered to me, "Get the hell out of here!" And I said, "No," and he said, "We're going to kick ass today." And there are people who act inappropriately on both sides, and I think that's important. Can I move on to an issue on the college campus demonstrations? I wanted to say this because I think it's important. I'm offended by all of the anti-Semitic rhetoric that goes on. Now, I want to be very clear about this. I said anti-Semitic, not just anti-Jewish, because I think it's important. As you guys know, I'm a Palestinian, and my nickname in high school was CJ. It stood for camel jockey. There were people who probably didn't know my name.
See, I thought all this time, Bill, you were actually a Barrymore.
No.
Okay.
But and if you look at, I will tell you that if you look at the media and how they portray Arabs in general, and how they portray Muslims in general, if we portray Jewish people in that same way, there'd be hell to pay, and there should be. But we portray Arabs, and it's acceptable, in such a derogatory way. And I will tell you that traveling to Morocco was very enlightening. The Muslims in Morocco were the kindest,
I love it.
Sweetest people I have ever met. When they talk about jihad, they are not talking about killing. They're talking about bringing peace, in a peaceful way, bringing people to Islam. So we've got a real problem in this country in trying to make the other side bad guys. We shouldn't do it with Jews. We shouldn't do it with Arabs. We should try to stop it and start dealing with particular people in particular issues. And I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud that young people on campuses are seeing an injustice and standing up. I've been seeing this.
Well, but Bill, I can tell you as a Black American, we've been feeling this for how many years? So we have not been viewed in the best light. So I definitely understand what you're saying, and that's what really among a lot of things about the former president who's running to be the leader of this free world. You know, you really continue to insult the Black Americans by gym shoes or your photo to say Black voters can relate to this. It's similar to a mugshot. You know, people can laugh about that, but it's very hurtful.
It's not
Beverly, don't buy the sneakers, but the Bible I think is cheaper.
Right, right. I saw it on Amazon.
Yeah. So you can actually save some money if you want Trump bling. The Bible is definitely cheaper. You might be able to get 2 for the price of the sneakers. Just saying.
Especially when you consider that you also get the Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance, or the Declaration of Independence and the Pledge of Allegiance as part of the Bible. So you're getting a 3.
And the menu, Mickey D's, his favorite restaurant.
Are those in Genesis, Exodus, or Revelation, Bill? Okay,
Joel. Yeah, the parts of the demonstrations that bother me are the signs that Palestine shall be free from the river to the sea. Essentially, what it's doing is exchanging one form of genocidal intent for another. Is how I see that. There is a awful situation in Gaza. Palestinians are being killed. You know, however you define it, it's god awful. Asking for the same thing on the other side, liquidate the Jews so Palestine can be free. That's the message that I'm hearing when I see those signs. Then you're arguing for the same god awful act, and that can't be. There should be a Palestinian state, but again, God willing, sometime we'll be in peace. I think we're kind of working toward that. I understood that there's the Arab states are trying to get together to figure out what we're going to do with Gaza. But when I see those particular signs, that scares me. You know, I'm Joel, the eradication of Jews. That's how I see it, and so it seems like a hypocritical argument to me.
Joel, I don't want to get overly nuanced about this, but to say free from the river to the sea doesn't necessarily mean with no Jews. What it means is, and I think this is a legitimate argument. I mean, I get real nervous because they talk about Gaza. Clearly, if they create a Palestinian state in Gaza, it's going to be a Muslim state. I happen to be a Palestinian. I happen to be a Christian. So where do I fit in? Mm-hmm. And where do I fit in as a Palestinian? You know, my parents, we own property that went back to the government when my father died. There is an argument to be made that slogan really means we should not have religious states in that area. That Jews, Muslims, and Christians should all be allowed to live in the river to the sea. I don't think that's I want to get to this, Allan. I don't think that's a practical issue at this point. But I think that most people who take that position really are trying to say we shouldn't have religious states. They ought to be secular, which is far more consistent with the American concept than what goes on. I understand the realities on the ground. I don't think that we're ever going to get rid of a Jewish state. And, you know, my family's from Haifa. I don't think Haifa is ever going to be part of a Palestine. But I think that that's the concept. And there were plenty of Jews in 48 to 50 who also believed that we ought to have a truly democratic state with Jews, Gentiles, and Muslims. It didn't happen.
Right.
To Bill's part about from the river to the sea, look, the river, that expression can be interpreted in so many ways. Yours is a very nice interpretation. I think there are others who believe that means the elimination of Israel or of Jews in the area. And as far
as
religious,
Zionists, could you live with that, Allan? From Zionists as opposed to Jews?
Well, you know, when we talk about Zionists, I'm always not clear. Does Zionist mean that you just support Israel, or is it? I'm not clear. Does that mean? I'm not clear what that is, right? Really, to be honest.
Well, I think it means I think Zionism means that you support the concept of a Jewish state, and I don't care what the religion is. I'm always opposed to religious states. I acknowledge they exist. I acknowledge reality, but I think Zionism is unique. If Zionism meant what it originally meant, a return to what they call the homeland by the Jewish people, I'm fine with it. What I'm not fine with is the fact that that the Jews will control the state, or the Zionists control.
You do realize, and I know this is rhetorical. All the Arab countries, so many of them are Muslim countries. They're religious.
I started off with the notion that I oppose them all. I oppose any religious state.
I would actually, Alan. I think if you actually looked across the Muslim world, you're not going to find that much theological imprimatur for their legal systems. Again, I mean, even in ones that claim to be Islamic republics, like Pakistan and all. But why don't we just go ahead and move on? Because I mean, I think this might have some staying power for quite a while. And that's looking, since we're talking about who can claim authenticity. Detroit's own native son and Congressman Shri Thanadar apparently is challenging his congressional primary opponent, Adam Hollier, with his opponent's submitted campaign signatures. There was some reporting that there may have been a forged signature from a newspaper reporter that Thanadar is really trying to latch onto as a way to cross the finish line yet again in Detroit's, 13th district, moving forward. 13th, as many know, Shri Thanadar, an Indian American entrepreneur, is representing Detroit, and Detroit, for the first time in 40 some odd years, is not represented by an African American. Does this particular action by Shri have any legs, or is it going to go the way of a toupee in the wind?
I think as far as him challenging the signatures, I think what we're seeing, it's interesting. I didn't realize some of these signature collectors get $10, sometimes $15 a signature. And what you're seeing, and I talk to people who are candidates, is they're seeing a whole sheet with all the same signatures, the same pen, the same dates. And so, some of these candidates are just not conscientious enough. We had 5 candidates, Republicans, eliminated from the gubernatorial race in 2022 because they hired a firm that collected thousands and thousands of fraudulent signatures. So I think it's it's certainly a danger that could knock Adam Hollier out.
Okay.
And that would be it. Go ahead, Barb.
No, that is, they can't get people to do it. Candidates can't get people to volunteer to do this. It's a hard job. It's a horrible job.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so amazing that some of the initiatives have gotten through. The people before politicians, the voter one, that was 100% volunteer. It was unbelievable the effort it was, and that's hard to do. Those people will probably never go out and do that again, because but it worked, but it's hard. Yeah.
Hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
Campaigning's hard. I ran for office mistakenly, lost badly, but I will tell you that doing that, shaking hands, talking to people, I have maintained relationships with many, many, many people in Southfield as a result of that campaign and knocking on doors, which is also hard, very similar, asking for people to sign my petitions. It is hard, but guess what? Democracy's hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, I think when you were trying to run for chief rabbi of the Grosse Pointes, it might have been better to run as a Sephardic. You have to know your demographics, man. Going into that. Well, one thing that fortunately Shri has not taken credit for is the NFL draft and the success that Detroit has had. Trust me, I'm sure he would try if he could. But shattering attendance records, 775,000 people coming down in a 3-day or 3-day period, which broke the prior record in Nashville, which was only 600,000. The Detroit police chief reported that there were only perhaps 2 very minor incidents that led to arrest. These were more assault than anything else, but really nothing else that was untoward, really showing Detroit on the national and the world stage as being a beacon, being a destination city, and also an economic boom, a boon of somewhere around $175 million coming in. How does it look?
Detroiters.
I think it looked great, and for me, and I really was impressed the first night of the draft, Thursday and Friday, particularly because the weather wasn't so great. It was cold and it was outside, and you still pulled in those huge numbers. I also think it's great for a lot of reasons. Looking forward, our perception, the city of Detroit perception, as everyone knows, has been in the tank for years. So hopefully, this could be one other catalyst that can help break down some of that perception how it was. My previous career, I used to be at Cobo Center, helping bring conventions in with the wonderful Convention Bureau. And I could tell you back in those days, it was hard. If it wasn't an industrial convention, they didn't want to hear it. They thought we were literally on the corners just running down the street shooting at each other. So Detroit has come a long way. Yeah. And I'm so glad to see that we have evolved, and then things and events like this can just help further break down that perception of Detroit. We're not perfect like any urban city. Everyone has their problems, because I just think people are angry these days, especially post-pandemic. However, to pull off an event to that magnitude with that many people, and in Detroit and being on the national stage, I just think it was you couldn't have picked a better perfect picture.
Our beautiful Detroit.
Steve.
I thought 2 things. Of the $170 million that they earned, I would say 50% of it came from the parking lots that raised their rates to $90 from 10. The second thing, the second thing to me, it's astounding, is that many people would swarm to any city, I don't care where it is, just to hear somebody stand up and saying, with the number 11 pick, Minnesota takes JJ McCarthy. I mean, as Terry's saying right there.
I agree, Terry. I agree.
These are the same people. You got to remember what McCrimmon is saying. Football fans go out when it's 8 degrees. They sit out there outside the stadium for 3.5 hours. You can't be surprised, I suppose. But for the life of me, I can't figure out. Don't people have more things to do? I mean,
we just missed the tailgating.
I think it was the hype, and it was a party. I went down there on Friday afternoon when they weren't even picking, selecting drafts. And it was just a huge party, and I think people wanted to feel part of it. It had been hyped for so long, everyone said. But what kind of puzzles me is that people from all around the country come around, but it may be just like, hey, they know it's a party. They know they're going to check out a new city. And Detroit, I think Detroit really the curiosity. I was in a Uber in Santa Monica, California, and the Uber driver, young guy, and he's like, I said, I'm from Detroit. And he's like, oh, man. He goes, that's on my bucket list. I got to make it there. And so I was like, wow. Okay.
You're kidding. Allan went downtown, paid $80 for parking, and he didn't even have a car. Joel.
The reality is, when people come to Detroit, we're just decent people. People want to ask directions. Hey, where do you want? I offer. If I see somebody lost, and I'm not, everybody does it. You see somebody confused on the streets, in what word you say, hey, what are you looking for? Yep. Detroiters are really, really kind.
Yes.
We're good to each other. We say hi to each other when we pass by on the streets. We're decent people. And I think when people come, especially from the East Coast to Detroit, and they see how kind we are and how welcoming we are, I think that has a great impression. I've never heard anybody, I just haven't heard this recently, anybody come to Detroit and saying, God, this was awful. I've always heard that these people are wonderful. And we are. We're wonderful people. We go through a lot. We suffer a lot, but we're in this together. And there is that community feel in the city, and we give that out when people come.
Yeah. And Joel, you're right. I was recently in D.C. last week and the week before in New York, and people say, where you're from. And even New York is now tough. They were like, oh, you're from Detroit. So they get excited, and they're like, we're hearing the new things there. And then they told us, they said, you guys are the most, people wouldn't believe it. You're the American people when you're kind of like in that coast of the area of Detroit. They're like, you're so nice until you're not. I said, that's a new T-shirt for us. Detroiters are nice until you're not. I like that.
Hey, so Nancy chimed in.
Can we do a shout out to
from
Nancy? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she said that Miami Vice did wonders for that city. We need an animatronic carjacking exhibit to give these tourists a thrill. Nancy, I think they tried that at Auto World in Flint, and I don't think it went well there. So
that was horrible. That was a horrible.
Can I just add this, Nancy? We miss you.
Yes.
All right.
In Italy,
There
when
you
you
go,
say
like
you're from Detroit, they say, "Oh, like
when I was in Jerusalem getting a falafel or shawarma sandwich, I can't remember. I was a young guy and I had a tiger hat on. He says, "Where are you from?" I said, "Detroit." And he goes, "Oh, really?" He was about 20 years old. I said, "You know about Detroit?" He goes, "Yeah, Eminem." So,
That's a good guy.
That's what we're good for. Well, one thing, yay, Nancy's back next week. Well, one of the things that Detroit is also seemingly having a resurgence of is the power and the potency of its unions. The UAW has now called for strike authorization vote at a Stellantis plant, citing safety and health concerns. Barb, what's going on there?
Well, Stellantis has been stinking up those neighborhoods for a while now, and they get fined by the city, and they go, "Oh, we'll stop," and then they do it again, and it's making the workers sick, it's making the neighbors sick, it's poisoning the water, and they do not care. So, Sean Fine, who does not fuck around, is gonna do it. Take him out. I mean, take him out. They're talking about a general strike. What year is it, Bob? 2028, when all of the contracts are up that he's bargaining, and he means it. I mean, it's a beautiful time. It gives me a whole lot of hope.
So Anne, listening in from England, says that in England she's got Motown, and you've also got that wonderful Northern Soul, heavily influenced by Motown as well. So I have to ask the Troika, since they're on here. Are any of you, Bill, Joel, and Steve, representing Mel Tucker's wife?
I wish. No.
Okay. The former coach of the Michigan State Spartans, football coach Mel Tucker, his wife has filed for divorce, alleging that he's moved $1.5 million from their joint funds. Speaking of parking, Allan, I mean, I guess that's better than $80 paying for parking there.
Yes. I was on jury duty the week of that, and thankfully there was a short trial. It was like a day and a half, but they were going to cancel court. I think they did for Thursday and Friday. They said parking is going to be too expensive, so no court on Thursday or Friday. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
What do you want? Wait, what do you want to know about? Was that just a statement, Mel Tucker's ex-wife?
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, this allegation, if it's proven to be true, I mean, how damaging is that to Mel Tucker in the divorce case? And is it actually criminal to go ahead and do that?
It's not criminal.
Joel, okay. I don't know if it's criminal or not.
It's not criminal, but in a divorce case, if you are caught hiding funds, the court has the discretion, doesn't usually happen, the court has the discretion to award all the funds that you tried to hide to the opposing party.
And the principle of divorce is equitable relief, equitable distribution. What's fair and reasonable, and so the judge has somewhat discretion. If she's claiming fault because he had this affair or this masturbatory, whatever the hell was going on, fault may tip the scales, but not all that much typically.
Very seldom.
We're like a no-fault state. So, it just doesn't tip it that way.
I can't speak as to the divorce part, but I would say that who they really ought to bring in at Michigan State is Matt Ishbia, who he and the other guy paid this guy $90 million.
Yeah.
And then Matt goes out, buys the Phoenix Suns, trades away all his draft picks, and picks up old guys like Durant, one of the great players ever, and they lose, and now they got no draft picks. So I'm just wondering if that was a guy they should have been listening to when they gave Mel Tucker a 10-year contract.
Well, Steve, I think you make an excellent point. Why did they listen to him?
Yeah, being a billionaire doesn't mean you're smart. It doesn't mean
it's all about
donations to the school.
Don't say Benjamin's Ilhan. I mean, Allan.
Right.
That would be wrong.
Right. I would get criticized for that.
All right. Before we go to
couple.
Our next statement, let's go to a couple of us.
We have a couple acquittal videos
tonight. Can we just acknowledge how refreshing it is to see a president of the United States at an event that doesn't begin with a bailiff saying "all rise"? We are all here tonight at Nerd Prom. Well, Matt Gaetz is at regular prom, but my weekend update co-anchor, Michael Che, was going to join me here tonight, but in solidarity with President Biden, I decided to lose all my black support. News is here tonight. It's the end of an era. Rupert Murdoch stepped down at Fox News, which is strange. I didn't think there was a step down from Fox News.
And here's just pure humor.
My wife is a psychology major in college, so she's constantly psychoanalyzing me. When I wanted to fire the pool boy, she said, "You feel threatened by young virile males because you're getting older and you're coping with your own mortality." And my argument was, we don't have a pool.
My wife is a psychologist, and I can relate to this.
All right. What did you guys think of Colin Jost? Is, I thought, a talented comedian. What was he doing reading like he was a second-year lawyer arguing a case in the circuit court? I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that was a little bit bleak.
Well, what do you think about
every time he said something?
No, but do you think he was afraid he was going to make a misstep? I mean, he can't talk on his own. He's a comedian, for
I
God's
think
sake.
he does stand up, though. I think he writes more than does. I don't think he's a stand-up.
I mean, that is the thing, Steve. I mean, they're reading off teleprompters live on SNL, so
I know.
Well, I
agree.
Yeah. All right, Alan. Let's cut to commercial.
All right.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
And now, Alan.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Okay, in honor of
should we show Bill's picture one more time?
we need to do that.
I love it.
Yes. And in honor of that picture and him returning to the show, Bill, you can go first. Who's your schmuck?
Well, I've got two, and I really can't decide. One is a nurse by the name of Heather Prester, who pled guilty to 30 murders. 17 murders with insulin overdoses in the hospital. It was an amazing story, and she certainly deserves it, and she justifies it based on her mother. And my other one, and probably the dominant one, is Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, who came up with the silliest thing I think I've ever heard any member of the legislature. And I don't know if he's a lawyer, but I think he is.
Yeah, he's a lawyer.
Yeah, who said, and I quote, "These are unauthorized protests." I wonder if he's ever read the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Unauthorized protest. The one thing the government can't do is authorize, and they can authorize plays and other things, but they cannot authorize or unauthorized a protest. And I thought it was offensive, not only to the students, but to the First Amendment.
Jen is listening and says that her schmuck of the week is whoever gave the EMT 4 months probation for a ketamine death of an innocent young man. Thank
Also
you, Jen, for putting that in. Barb.
Yeah, it's been a rich week for schmucks. You know, we have a dog-killing governor. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene, both defending Israel and saying anti-Semitic things. It's like the whole thing rattling around her head like a lentil in a bowl. But I have to go with the all of the regents, all of these college campuses that are really missing an opportunity to work with young people and to understand what they're going through. I think they worry more about things like windows and litter than they care about free speech. And I think that this is going to have long-lasting impact, just as it did on you, as me as a young woman watching it as a kid. I was 12 in 1968, and I learned that during that time that, they're not on my side. These, and I think that they're showing these people again, and I think it's a damn shame. We could do something different in this, and it's happening in Europe too. I have to say they're in Paris right now, bashing students' heads. So they are my schmucks this week.
Which they did in '68, as they did here as well. So,
But, well,
Barb,
you know,
I don't know why they're so concerned about the price of windows, because Wallside Windows has a deal right now where no payment for 80 months. This is not a paid endorsement. It's swimming around in my head like a lentil in a bowl. So there you go.
Wait, that's how the law firm of Seikaly, Sklar, and Fishman, based in Grosse Pointe, that's what we tell people. You don't have to pay us for 80 months.
18 months. Oh, great.
Of course, you're not going to get service until after you pay, but that's okay.
I was going to say, when we were on strike at the Sterling Heights plant, for a while we came every Friday, Saturday nights, and the Sterling Heights police would, besides pepper spray and give people a little whack, they put them one night. It was a really hot night out. It was July. They put people in their van. They arrested people, put them in a van in the median there, and they turned the heat up as high as it could go and close the doors and lock the doors. And so that's
such a shameful time.
Just painful. Steve, who's your schmuck?
My schmuck is Todd Blanche. Not because of anything particular that he did that makes him the schmuck, but I think those of us who are lawyers know that you always have an opportunity to take a case or turn down a case. And if you have a pretty good reputation that you've built up over the years, which it sounds like he does, none of us had ever heard of him before this, but to do what he's done and to have to stand in front of a judge like Merchan, who's obviously a very fine judge, and have to listen to the things that he's been told, and every single thing the judge has told him is true and accurate. And I make him a schmuck because I don't know what else he really is. I don't know what. I'd love to sit with the guy and find out why he decided to do this, but that's not going to happen. So I just figure he must be a schmuck if he's willing to deal with one Donald J. Trump and behave the way he's behaved. He's it. A successful lawyer at age 47. He may be washing dishes at age 50.
Steve, I have a question. What if Trump came to you and said, "Hey, here's $1 million retainer, represent me"? What do you? I
would tell him to take his $1 million. First thing, he'd never do that because he's too cheap. But if he brought me a cashier's check for $1 million, I'd tell him where he could put it, and it's not something I would say right here. It wouldn't cross my mind in a million years. And I can tell you guys, it's never been $1 million. But there have been people who you guys know who they are in this area who have offered me an awful lot of dough to take their case, and I told them no, because you know what's going to happen. You think Blanche didn't know this? How could he possibly not know this, that Trump was going to behave the way he was and ask him to do the things he's doing? That's what happens when you have people like that. You tell them no. You fire them before they have a chance to fire you. That's what you do.
You know, I agree with Steve. I've represented some very difficult clients. At least one of them that I loved. I mean, he was a great. I loved him personally, but he's an incredibly difficult client. I ended up firing him because, in the end, all an attorney has is his reputation. That's all we have. You stand up before a judge. If a judge thinks he was a lying sack of poop when he was representing so-and-so, he's going to start with or she is going to start with the assumption that you're lying now. And so when you start making those sacrifices for one client, you're sacrificing all of your clients. Can't do it.
Actually, Bill, I'd want to add to that list. I mean, you are somebody of sartorial splendor, and you're funny, and you're aging well. So I don't think it's just your reputation as a lawyer You're far more multidimensional. All of you. Give yourself a round of applause.
Oh my!
I love our troika.
Right.
We just need a new office. When Nancy comes back, maybe she can get us into Grosse Pointe.
Wait, Steve, have you heard the expression "be careful what you ask for"?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on back, Nancy.
There you go. Beverly, who you got?
Okay, who I have? I had a couple of them. A couple of people have already said it, but my schmucks of the week, of course, Marjorie Greene. I try not to just, she's just probably going to stay on the list the rest of the year. But, it really highlights the, how in the world could this woman continuously get elected or just get elected? I mean, now she wants to oust, and I'm no fan of Mike Johnson, but then you want to oust Mike Johnson, and then you make statements like, okay, he's aligning with the Democrats, but then you don't remember that in order to oust him, you're going to need the Democrats too. So this woman's all over the place. She's totally a schmuck. And Terry is right. Chatfield is my second schmuck. For all the things that he's accused of, and then you're down at the Kentucky Derby. So I hope he takes a picture like Bill did with the camel, since he's my schmuck of the week.
Wearing a big old hat.
The trial has not started. They have been charged. Their charges are.
Yeah, I know, but it's not a good look. He said the Kentucky Derby. Where did he get the money to travel? No, I'm kidding.
Exactly. Right.
Well, the thing is, Beverly, is the court has confiscated their passports. So I guess they had to find somewhere that they could go domestically. So thank you for the endorsement, Layla, for Bill, Joel, and Steve having integrity. Fully agree.
Let me say this about integrity in the law. I want you to know that 98% of all lawyers ruin the reputation of the 1% of us who have integrity.
Yeah.
So actually, I wouldn't add elitism to that list that had sartorial splendor and all. It's not a good look there. But Allan.
No, I was just going to say that the Chatfields. Oh, my turn.
Oh, okay. No.
I was going to say the Chatfields were hoping to get the warehouse. Hang out at the warehouse that the Crumblies were in, but that was they couldn't do that, so they picked Kentucky. They were just looking for somewhere to escape.
I've never seen a warehouse that has a sign that says no vacancy, but I think you're onto something else. Joel.
Mine is, well, I want to give a shout out to Howard Stern, who did a great interview with President Biden. And whoever listened to it, I enjoy Howard Stern quite a bit. I listen to him pretty much regularly. The interview he did with Biden humanized Biden. Biden was quick. You can see cognitively he was intact, and he made him a human being that you liked and respected. And I think that's what, the way that Stern portrayed him as the father of the country, and he's going to take care of us. I think that's a nice way to portray Joe Biden, especially with the juxtaposition of Trump, who's just a malevolent asshole. But my schmuck of the week is going to be Kristi Noem. I guess that puppy was a little bit too adorable and cuddly. And when you get a puppy that's too cuddly and lovable, you got to throw it out the fucking window. You got to kill that thing. And that's what
you got to shoot it in the face.
Oh, got to shoot it. And you got to take joy and pleasure in it because you're doing a good thing. That is the most absurd thing. I don't know what she was thinking when she wrote it, that it was going to say, hey, she's one tough bitch. But it's ridiculous, man. I mean, to kill your fucking puppy? What the
and then a goat. And then 3 horses.
Worse, Joel, is that she didn't give the puppy the opportunity to grow up to become one.
Absolutely, and the puppy had potential as a bitch. So
the worst is that she bragged about it. She bragged about it. I mean,
heartless.
It comes out from a book she's writing. For God's sakes, Lila's completely right. It's amazing that she did it, but to brag about it in a book and use it as to demonstrate to Trump that you have the ability to make these tough decisions.
Right.
Yeah. She also dispatched a goat. And actually, Layla, just one point of correction. That's the same person that Joel's speaking about, Kristi Noem, who's the governor of South Dakota and on the short list for Trump's VP. Allan, your schmuck.
I was going to pick Marjorie Taylor Greene because of her reference to the Jews ratting out Jesus. But the other one is Trump's the auditing firm that's auditing the auditor for Trump Social, BF Borger. They found the SEC found that they deliberately and systematically failed to properly audit. They've been fined $14 million and agreed to basically go out of business. So Schmuck.
Boy, are you picky, Ellen?
Wow.
Are you kidding? That just came across the wire. Alan is like multitasking. So good job, Alan.
I love it.
On that. Okay. Well, my schmuck, I had one, but then another one came across the wire. So one schmuck is Barbara Streisand for posting an Instagram comment for the actress Melissa McCarthy, who's lost a little bit of weight, asking whether she took Ozempic to lose the weight. This, of course, is rather ironic because Babs herself actually has more plastic than Great Lakes litter. So,
ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. But my real schmuck is actually CNN presenter Casey Hunt, who, in discussing the campus protests, referred to a 6-year-old Palestinian Hind Rajab, who was killed after she called emergency services to rescue her. Was killed by the Israeli Defense Force. Referred to her as a woman who was killed in Gaza. By most standards, a 6-year-old is never considered a woman except by pedophiles and apparently CNN presenters. So, Casey Hunt, you're my schmuck of the week for that. Yeah. Anyways, thank you. Thank you all for the rich week. Thank you for your rich conversation and your input as always. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Steve Fishman in the center column or row. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Beverly Watts. And of course, thank you, with the last word as usual, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safe.
Have a great weekend, everybody.